Hi everyone. Today we are going to learn the intergroup transactions in consolidations. So we based on the chapter number 2 of the textbook. Let me come to the learning objectives. First one, uh, we should know why we need to make adjustments for intergroup transactions, right? And we will be discussing how to adjust the beginning and ending inventory arise from intergroup transactions, intergroup sales. And number three, we will be learning how to adjust the transactions on transfer of property, plant and equipment in both current and previous periods, right? And then how to adjust for the transfers from inventory to the PPE and from PPE to the inventory. Okay, number five, intergroup services such as management fees, consultation fees, advisory fees, etc. etc. And how to adjust for the intergroup dividends. And lastly, how to adjust for the borrowings in between the entities in the group. Okay. Now, if you can remember the consolidation process, we have the parent entities uh, financial statement and the subsidiary companies financial statements. So we have these separate financial statements, parent company and the subsidiary company. Okay, so we need to make number of adjustments. Okay, now so far we have done the BCVR adjustment, business combination valuation reserve adjustment, and pre-acquisition entries. In this lesson, we are going to learn intergroup transactions. So this is the focus for this lesson. Okay, so you can guess that our next lesson will be on non-controlling interest, NCI, right? So after we make these adjustments, we get consolidated financial statements for the group. Okay, now we have undertaken the acquisition analysis. There we calculated the goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, right? Now in the step number 2, we have done the consolidation adjustments number 1 and 2, business combination valuation entries, where you need to adjust the fair values of asset and liabilities acquired. Okay, and pre-acquisition entries, you have to eliminate the investment in the subsidiary company against the equity balances of subsidiary company at the date of acquisition. There you need the pre-acquisition entries. Okay, as I explained earlier, the today's focus is on elimination of intergroup transactions. Okay, elimination of intergroup transactions. Let's see why we need to eliminate intergroup transactions. Okay, first you should know what are intergroup transactions. Okay, now intergroup transactions are the transactions that occur between entities in the group. Okay, it could be a sale of inventory, it could be sale of fixed asset, it could be providing services, it could be intergroup borrowings, right? So if any transaction is occurred between entities in the group, that transaction is called as intergroup transaction. Okay, now in separate entities, right, these transactions are recorded. Say for example, our parent company is T, the subsidiary company is S. Parent company sells inventory to the subsidiary company. Okay, now this sales transaction is recorded in the parent's books of accounts. On the other hand, it is a purchase to the subsidiary company. So the subsidiary company will record this transaction as a purchase. Okay, so as per the normal accounting standards and other regulations, this transaction could be recorded in each party in their own financial statements. Okay, uh, but when we take the group as a whole, so in the consolidated financial statements, we know that we consider the parent and its subsidiaries as a single economic entity. Okay, single economic entity. Now, when we prepare consolidated financial statements, we take asset, liabilities, equity, income, and expenses accounts, okay, of each company, and then we add these five items, five elements together to prepare consolidated financial statements. අපි subsidiary company එකේ සහ parent company එකේ asset, liability, equity, income, expenses ඔක්කොම එකතු කරලා තමයි consolidated financial statements හදන්නේ. Okay. Now, from the group's point of view, right? Now, if I take the same example again, parent company sells goods to the subsidiary company. Now from the group's point of view, මේ group එක පැත්තෙන් හිතනකොට මේක sale එකක් නෙමෙයි. This is not a sale. Because if we take the group as a single economic entity, this sales transaction has not been occurred, or sales transaction has not been occurred or has not been done for outside customer. බාහිර customer කෙනෙකුට මේක විකුණලා නැහැ. So this is a internal transfer. අපේම group එකේ companies දෙකක් අතර transfer එකක් විතරයි. Right? So you can see from the group's point of view, a transaction has not occurred with an entity outside the group. බාහිර කෙනෙකුට මේක විකුණලා නැහැ. Right? Therefore, what we need to do, this is an internal transfer. This is not a sale when we take the group as a single entity. Right? Therefore, what we need to do, we have to eliminate this transaction, right, from each side, because it is not happened to a party outside to the group. මේකෙන් බාහිර කෙනෙකුට මේ transaction එක ඉටු වෙලා නැහැ. ඒ නිසා අපි eliminate කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ අයින් කරන්න ඕනේ මේ transaction එක පැති දෙකෙන්ම. ඒකට හේතුව තමයි නැත්තම් it will be double counted. Okay, it will be double counted. Right. So what we do, eliminate in full intergroup asset and liabilities, equity, income, expenses, and cash flows. Right? So to adjust the effect of intergroup transactions, what we need to do, eliminate in full සම්පූර්ණයෙන් අයින් කරන්න ඕනේ intergroup asset, liabilities, equity, income, expenses, and cash flows. Now you can see disregarding the ownership interest of the parent. Meaning, now even if the parent holds less than 100%, the full elimination should be done. අපි හිතමුකෝ parent subsidiary company එකේ අයිතිසියට 75යි කියලා. Right? But still you have to make the full elimination, right, of the intergroup transactions, right? Because when we adjust for the NCI, we will be discussing that in the next lesson. Okay, when we adjust for the NCI, that remaining 25% which is not belong to the parent will be adjusted. එතකොට මෙතන acquire කරලා තියෙන percentage එක නොසලකා අපි inter group transactions fully eliminate කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒකට හේතුව තමයි අපි NCI සඳහා adjustment එක කළාට පස්සේ අර අපිට අයිති නැති ප්‍රමාණයට අදාළ ප්‍රමාණය අයින් වෙනවා. එසා මතක තියාගන්න, disregarding the ownership interest, we have to eliminate in full the intergroup asset, liabilities, equity, income, expenses and cash flows. Okay. Adjustment will also be required in future periods. Depending on the transaction, we may have to make adjustments in the future periods as well. Let's see. Okay. Now, due to these adjustments, right, there may be tax implications. Now, you know that if the carrying amount of asset and liabilities differ from the tax base, right, and if this difference is a temporary difference, right, you need to account for or adjust for deferred tax, right? So you have covered the deferred tax lesson previously, therefore I hope that you have the required knowledge. Now what we compare here, now we compare the tax base of the asset and liabilities of the individual entity. හරි, එකිනෙක entity එකේ දැනට ඒ asset එක හෝ liability එක record කරලා තියෙන tax base එක ගන්න. හරි, ඒක compare කරන්නේ හැබැයි ඒ individual financial statement වල තියෙන carrying amount එකත් එක්ක නෙමෙයි. Now this is the tax base of the asset and liabilities of the individual entity. Let's say P&S, right? P&S companies, the tax bases of individual entities, right? But we compare this tax base against the carrying amount of asset and liabilities reported by the group. Group එකේ record කරපු ගානත් එක්ක තමයි compare කරන්නේ. Okay? Group එකේ record කරපු ගානත් එක්ක compare කරන්න අපි ගණන් හදනකොට බලමු. Right? So thereby we can identify either deferred tax asset or deferred tax liability. I think that you can remember the logic, right? So we focused on the asset and liabilities. Now, in terms of asset, if the carrying amount increase, right? Carrying amount increase, then the carrying amount is higher than the tax base. The result is deferred tax liability. In the previous lesson also, I summarized this treatment, so I think that you can remember. If the carrying amount of the asset increases, it will create a deferred tax liability. Therefore, the journal entry is deferred tax liability account credit, income tax expense account debit when it is relevant to the business combination valuation entries. You can remember that it is debited to the BCVR. Okay, usually it is debited to the income tax expense, but when it is applicable to the business combination valuation entries, we debit to the BCVR. On the other hand, if the carrying amount is decreased, right, in an asset, therefore tax base is higher than the carrying amount, therefore it results a deferred tax asset. The double entry, deferred tax asset account debit, income tax expense account credit. Now these two are a bit important, right? If you have a decrease of previously increased asset, හිතන්න මේ situation එක දැන් previously අපේ carrying amount එක increase වුණා. හරි? එතකොට ඒ increase වීම නිසා deferred tax liability එකක් recognize කරා. Income tax expense account debit, deferred tax liability account credit. ඒ increase වෙච්ච asset එකම පසු කාලීනව subsequently decrease වෙනවා නම්. That is the meaning of decrease of previously increased asset. පෙර වැඩි වෙච්ච asset එකක් තමයි දැන් අඩු වෙන්නේ. Like due to depreciation. Now if you make additional depreciation because of the consolidation, right? Because of the depreciation, the carrying amount of the asset decreases. Additional depreciation නිසා asset එකේ carrying amount එක අඩු වෙනවා. ඒතර asset එකේ carrying amount එක අඩු වෙනවා කියන්නේ tax base එකට වැඩිය deferred tax asset එකක් ලෙස recognize කරන්න එපා. මොකද previously recognize කරපු deferred tax liability එකක් තියෙනවා. අන්න ඒ deferred tax liability එකේ reduction එකක් ලෙස ගන්න. Therefore reduce deferred tax liability because already you have or you had recognized the deferred tax liability for the same asset. Therefore, if the carrying amount is decreased subsequently, right, you should not recognize that as a deferred tax asset. Instead, you should recognize that as a reduction of already decrease of deferred tax liability. Then how the journal entry is recorded? Okay, deferred tax liability account debit because it is a reduction of the liability, and income tax expense is credit. The other case, increase of previously decreased asset. Now think about this situation. Okay. Now previously decreased asset. Now when the decrease happen, we recognize a deferred tax asset. එතකොට previously carrying amount එක අඩු වෙච්ච asset එකක increase එකක් නම් දැන් වෙන්නේ subsequently වෙන්නේ. හරි? එතකොට අපි දන්නවා carrying amount එක වැඩි වුණොත් එහෙම carrying amount එක වැඩි වුණොත් එහෙම deferred tax liability එන්නේ. නමුත් liability එකක් recognize කරන්න එපා. මොකද මේ increase වෙන්නේ previously decrease වෙච්ච asset එකක්. එහෙනම් previously decrease වෙනකොට deferred tax asset එකක් recognize කරා. එහෙනම් subsequently increase වෙනකොට ඒ හඳුනාගත්ත deferred tax asset එකේ reduction එකක් ලෙස ලියන්න. එහෙනම් reduce deferred tax asset. Okay. Now if you have a asset which has a deferred tax asset recognized previously, right? When the carrying amount is increased subsequently, right? You should recognize that as a reduction of the deferred tax asset, not as a deferred tax liability. එතකොට reduction of deferred tax asset වෙන්නේ නේද? asset පැත්තෙන් හිතන්න පුළුවන් deferred tax asset account credit, income tax expense account debit. Okay. Same can be applicable to liabilities. මම එදත් කිව්ව මතක ඇති liability එකක carrying amount එක increase වුණොත් අපිට ඇති වෙන්නේ deferred tax asset එකක්. එහෙනම් deferred tax asset account debit, income tax expense credit. මෙතන BCVR කියන්නේ business combination valuation entries ලියද්දී ඒ increase එක වුණා නම් carrying amount එකේ අන්න එතකොට අපි ඒක adjust කරන්නේ BCVR වලට. අපි මේක කරා previous topic එකේදී. ඒ වගේම liability එකක් decrease වෙනවා කියන්නේ carrying amount එක decrease වෙනවා, it results a deferred tax liability, right? So deferred tax liability account credit, income tax expense account debit, right? So remember the deferred tax adjustments for asset and liabilities because that is important for this lesson. Okay, you can take the summary which I presented last topic plus your lecture materials or notes which is relevant to the income tax topic. Okay, so we'll come to the first transaction, intergroup transaction, transfers of inventory. Now think about this simple sales transaction. Now this is our subsidiary company, this is our parent company. Now subsidiary company has purchased rupees 100 worth of goods on 1st June 2016 from the supplier. Supplier ගෙන් අරන් තියෙනවා 100 worth of goods on 1st June 2016. හරි? Now it is the cost to the subsidiary company. It is a purchase. ඒ තමයි purchase එකක්. subsidiary company එක මේ purchase කරපු stock එක sell කරලා තිනවා parent. The subsidiary company has sold this purchased stock to its parent. හරි. හැබැයි විකුණලා තියෙන්නේ ගත්ත cost එකට නෙමෙයි. ගත්තේ 100 වලට, that is the cost to the subsidiary company, but it has been sold to its own parent company for 150,000. right? 150කට 150 වලට තමයි විකුණලා තියෙන්නේ. On 25th June 2016 subsequent to the purchase. ඒතර වලට මේකෙන් පේනවා subsidiary company එක මේ transaction එකෙන් 50 profit earn කරලා තියෙනවා. The subsidiary company has earned 50 profit from this transaction. හරි. ඒක okay. මොකද ඒක companies දෙකක් එහෙම නැත්නම් entities දෙකක් වෙන තාක්කල් okay. එතකොට මේක parent company එකට තනිවම ගත්තාම when we take the parent company as a single entity or isolatedly, the cost of that transaction is 150. එතකොට parent මේක වෙන්නේ 150. හරි. එතකොට අපිට situation එකේදී කියනවා all inventory is still held by the parent at 30th June 2016. Now the inventory value is 150. ඒක එයාගේ පැත්තෙන් හරි. මොකද එයා ඒ කියන්නේ parent මේක purchase කළේ 150 වලටනේ. ඒ නිසා purchase 150 වලට තියෙන්නේ තාම විකුණලා නැහැ. Still held by the parent. Meaning it has not been sold to the outside customer, right? By the parent company. විකුණලා නැහැ outside customer කෙනෙකුට. ඒ නිසා parent ගේ inventory වල මේක තවම තියෙනවා. හරි. එතකොට මේ 150 inventory වල තියෙන එක okay. Inventory, this 150 value is okay for the parents individual financial statements. මේ 150 තියෙන එක okay වෙනවා parent ගේ individual financial statements වලට. හරි. Because that is the cost to the parent company. ඒ වගේම subsidiary company එකේ sales, මෙයාගේ sales 150, එයාගේ cost එක තිබුණේ 100. එතකොට එයාගේ profit එකක් තියෙනවා 50 profit. So this is okay. This 50 profit, cost 100, sales 150, all are okay for the subsidiary company when it is taken as a single entity. එතකොට මේ වගේ වැරදි කියලා කියන්න බෑ. මේවා හරි. හැබැයි when we take the parent company and subsidiary company as a single entity, right? So this is not a sales transaction because a sales transaction has not been occurred to an outside customer. Therefore, this is just an internal transfer. බාහිර කෙනෙකුට මේක විකිල්ලා නැහැ. මේක නිසා හුදෙක්ම අභ්‍යන්තර නැත්නම් internal transfer එකක්. Okay? දැන් නිකන් ඔයාලා හිතන්න subsidiary company එක මේක කොහොමද රෙකෝඩ් කරන්නේ, parent company එක කොහොමද මේක රෙකෝඩ් කරන්නේ කියලා. එයාලගේ individual financial statements වල. හරි? අපි බලමු කොහොමද කරන්න කියලා. හරි. මම මේක ඕනනම් එකින් එක පැහැදිලි කරන්නම්. Now in the subsidiaries book මේ අපි කතා කරන්නේ individual financial statements වල. In individual financial statements. Subsidiary company එක මේක රෙකෝඩ් කරන්නේ කොහොමද? Now subsidiary company purchased this stock at 100 on 1st June 2016. When they purchased this stock on 1st June 2016, they record debit inventory 100, cash or accounts payable or creditors control account credit 100. එතකොට subsidiary company එක මේක රෙකෝඩ් කරනකොට purchase කරපු දවසේ එයාගේ inventory account එක debit, එක්ක cash එහෙම නැත්නම් creditors control account එක credit වෙනවා. ඔන්න purchase එක හරි. ඒක කිසි වරදක් නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ කියනවා 25th of June 2016 this stock has been sold to the parent company for 150,000. ඔන්න ජූනි 25 2016 මේ ස්ටොක් එක තමන්ගේ parent company එකට විකුණනවා. මම නැවත කියනවා මේ අපි රෙකෝඩ් කරන්නේ individual financial statements වල. Right? How do we record? So when we sell this stock to the parent company for 150, assume that we get cash 150. Therefore, cash account debit 150. Okay? It is our sale. Therefore, sales account credit 150. මේ කරන්නේ individual financial statements වල record කරලා තියෙන විදිය. Then අපි purchase කරගත්ත එක තියෙන inventory account එකේ. Now you know that as per the matching concept, when the stock is purchased, it is an asset. When it is sold, then it becomes the cost of sales. එතකොට දැන් අපේ තියෙන inventory කියන account එකේ 100 තියෙන්නේ. එහෙනම් inventory account එකෙන් transfer වෙන්න ඕනේ inventory account credit 100, cost of goods sold account debit 100. Right? When you sell the inventory, then you recognize the expense. Inventory account credit, cost of sales account debit. Okay? Right. So what happens, because of this sales transaction, you in the sense the subsidiary company recognized 50 profit. Because sales is 150, cost of goods sold is 100, therefore 150 minus 100, you recognized, or the subsidiary company recognized 50 profit. Right? There are profit එකක් වෙනවා නම් tax rate එක අපි දිගටම right from the beginning we assume the tax rate as 30%. Right? Therefore 50 වලට 50 profit එකට 30% කියලා කියන්නේ 30% කියලා කියන්නේ, right? You have to pay or you have to incur income tax expense additionally because it is a profit. If you generate a profit, on the profit you have to pay taxes. Okay? 50 profit multiplied by tax rate 30%, the subsidiary company recognizes the income tax expense. Income tax expense 15 debit because it is an expense, right? Until you pay, it is a liability, current tax liability or cash. සමහර විට මේක cash වලින් ගෙවනවා නම් cash. Okay? Otherwise current tax liability account credit. ඔන්න මේකත් හරි. එතකොට මේ sales transaction එකේ profit එකක් තිබුණ නිසා profit එක මත additional tax ගෙවන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට subsidiary company එක 50 into 30% 15 income tax expense එකක් හඳුනා ගන්නවා. ඒක ගෙවනකම් liability එකක්. It's a current tax liability credit 15. Now this is how this transaction is recorded in the subsidiaries books of accounts. Let's come to the parents books of accounts. Right. Again and again I am telling you that these are the entries that we make, right? That we make in individual financial statements. Individual financial statements. Right. Now parent company acquired this stock from the subsidiary company at 150. So it is the cost to the parent company. It is the cost to the parent company. Therefore, when the parent company purchases this stock from the subsidiary company, inventory account debit 150, cash account credit 150. Okay, this is how the parent company has recorded this purchase from its subsidiary company. Now, these are the entries that they have kept in individual financial statements. Let's come to the consolidation. Now, when it comes to the consolidation, let me take consolidation column here. Consolidation. Now, this purchase transaction, which is in the black color, this is not an intergroup transaction. This transaction is not an intergroup transaction because it has happened between the subsidiary company, one of the entities in the group, and one outside party, the supplier. Therefore, it is not considered as an intergroup transaction. But the transactions which are in red color are the result of intergroup transaction. Right? So what we need to do in the consolidation, we have to eliminate this intergroup transaction because it has not been occurred, right? This sales transaction has not been occurred with the entity in the group and one outside party. In some make a සිදු වෙලා නැහැ. මේක සිදු නොවෙච්ච transaction එකක්. අපි කියන realize වෙච්ච නැති transaction එකක් කියලා. ඒ නිසා මේක eliminate කරන්න ඕනේ. හරි? මෙතෙන්දි මතක තියාගන්න තමයි මේ ක්‍රමයේදී අපි adapt කරන ක්‍රමයේදී අපි income statement එක, statement of financial position, statement of changes in equity, even the cash flow statement මේ සියල්ලම එකට හදාගෙන යන්නේ. එකක් හදලා අනිත් එක හදනව නෙමෙයි. income statement හදලා SOFP හදනව නෙමෙයි. SOFP එක හදලා income statement හදනව නෙමෙයි. ඔක්කොම ටික එකට හදාගෙන යන්නේ. හරි? income statement, statement of financial position, statement of changes in equity, right? So all these statements are prepared simultaneously. Therefore, when it comes to the consolidation, now this sales transaction, sales entry is incorrect. What I have circled is incorrect because this is not a sale which has been happened between one entity in the group and an outside party. So what we can do is sales debit. Sales debit, let me write like this, 150. Okay, sales account debit 150. Now look at this, cash entry is set off because here cash debit, here cash credit. Therefore these two entries, usually when we add asset, liability, equity, income, expenses, cash flows of each entity අපි එකතු කරනවා කියවනේ. එකතු කරනකොට මේක set off වෙනවනේ. මේක set off වෙනවා. Right? Therefore we don't need to eliminate that because that will be eliminated once we aggregate the cash balance of each entity. But the sales මේක අයින් කරන්න ඕනේ. Right? ඔන්න අපි ඒක අයින් කරා sales account එක debit. ඒ වගේම මේ cost of goods sold එකත් අයින් වෙන්න ඕනේ. මේකත් අයින් වෙන්න ඕනේ. මොකද මේකත් අපේ cost of goods sold නෙමෙයි. මොකද අපි ඇත්තටම මේක විකුණලා නැහැ. outside party එකට විකුණලා නැහැ. So මේකත් අයින් වෙන්න ඕනේ. එහෙනම් credit කරනවා මම. Okay, credit cost of goods sold 100. Right? ඊට පස්සේ inventory ගත්තොත් එහෙම දැන් මේක විකුණලා නැති නිසා inventory account එකේ තියෙන්න ඕනේ 100 purchase value එකනේ. මෙන්න මේ 100 තමයි තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒක තමයි අපි outside supplier ගෙන් ගත්ත ගාන. ඒතර මේ stock එක තාම විකිලා නැහැ. හරි. But if you look at the transaction, inventory account එක debit කළා 100, ඊට පස්සේ inventory account එක credit කරා 100. එතකොට set off වුණානේ එතන. හැබැයි ආය parent company එක recognize කරා inventory account එක 150. දැන් මේ inventory account එක හැබැයි තියෙන්නේ not at the cost from the group's point of view. group එක පැත්තෙන් බලනකොට මේ 150 කියන්නේ cost එක නෙමෙයි. ඒ තියෙන sales price එක. හරි? හැබැයි group එක පැත්තෙන් තියෙන ඕන cost එක තමයි මෙන්න මේ purchase කරපු cost එක 100. එහෙනම් we are sure that the inventory balance of the parent has been overstated by 50. Okay, because that 150 consists of 50 profit. When we take the group's point of view, group එකේ පැත්තෙන් බලද්දි මේ 150 කියන්නේ 50ක profit එකක් ඇතුව තියෙන value එක. අන්න ඒ profit එකට අපි කියනවා unrealized profit කියලා. ඒක realize වෙලා නැහැ. ඇයි ඒ? බාහිර කෙනෙකුට outside party එකකට customer කෙනෙකුට මේක විකුණලා නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මේ 50 profit එකට අපි කියනවා unrealized profit. Okay, this 50 profit is called as unrealized as it has not been done to party outside to the business. Okay, therefore because of this 50 unrealized profit, the inventory balance of the parent company has been overstated by 50. So we have to remove it. එතකොට ඉන්වෙන්ටරි account එක වැඩිපුර ඩෙබිට් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. එහෙනම් ක්‍රෙඩිට් කරනවා inventory. Inventory account credit 50. Okay, inventory account credit 50. So this adjustment is needed. Okay, now what else? Right, what else? Now you see they have recognized, they in the sense the subsidiary company, the seller has recognized income tax expense. Income tax expense 15. You cannot uh, recognize that, right, until you sell it. Now from the group's point of view, group එක පැත්තෙන් හිතපොම මේක තාම විකිලා නැහැ. එතකොට තාම විකුණුවේ නැත්තම් group එක පැත්තෙන් බලනකොට මේක income tax expense නෙමෙයි. හරි? income tax expense නෙමෙයි. එතකොට ඔයාලට පේනවා පහලත් මම adjustment එක දාලා ඇති. මේ තියෙන මේ adjustment එක මම ලියපු එක. right? See, we have to remove the income tax expense. අපි අතනම ලියමු බලන්න. ලියපු තරම ලියමුදට clear වෙයි. Right? So we have to remove this income tax expense because it is not an expense from the group's point of view because the sales transaction has not been occurred. Right? Therefore, you have to remove. Therefore, credit income tax expense 15 you have to remove. හරි? දැන් කෙනෙකුට හිතෙන්න පුළුවන් මේ current tax liability එකත් අඩු කරන්න ඕනද කියලා. නැහැ. ළමයි tax ගෙවන්නේ, ඒ කියන්නේ tax amount එක ගෙවන්නේ group point of view එකකින් නෙමෙයි. ඔයාලා taxation law එක ඉගෙනගෙන තියෙනවා නම් tax එක ගෙවන්නේ individual financial statements වලින්. ඒ නිසා government එකට ගෙවන tax එක මේකේ තියෙන්න ඕනේ. This is correct. Okay, don't remove that because that is the amount to be payable to the government. Taxation law එක අනුව individual entity එකකින් තමයි ගෙවන්න ඕනේ. group වෙලා ගෙවන්න බෑ. හරි, ඒ නිසා මේ payable balance එක හරි. ඒකේ කිසි වරදක් නැහැ because it is payable to the government, one outside party. Right? Therefore that entry is correct. But from the group's point of view, you can't recognize the expense because this has not been occurred. Right? This is not a sale. Right? Therefore, what we did, we removed the income tax expense, therefore credited income tax expense account by 50. Then what is the debit entry? Debit entry. Now you see, the inventory is an asset account. Assets carrying amount has been decreased. Asset එකක carrying amount එක අඩු වෙලා. මොකද asset එක credit නේ වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. හරි? Asset එකක, if I write it here, asset එකක carrying amount is less than the tax base. Inventory account එකට credit කළා කියලා කියන්නේ inventory කියන්නේ asset එකක්. asset එකේ carrying amount එක අඩු වෙලා. tax base එකේ මොනවත් උන්නේ නැහැ කියන්නේ ඒ තිබ්බ ගානම. එතකොට මේකෙන් ඇතිවන result එක තමයි මතක ඇති asset එකක carrying amount එක අඩු වුණොත් එහෙම deferred tax asset. Therefore what we debit deferred tax asset account 15 debit. So keep in mind these are the consolidation entries required. හරි? These are the consolidation entries required. The consolidation වලදී මම තව චුටි දෙයක් කියන්නම්. විකුණනකොට මේක ඇත්තටම outside party එකකට විකුණනකොට external customer කෙනෙකුට විකුණනකොට මේ deferred tax asset account එක credit කරලා income tax expense debit කරන්න ඕනේ. When the sale is actually happen to an outside party. Okay, deferred tax asset account credit. Okay, no need to keep that asset further. Deferred tax asset account credit 15, then the income tax expense account debit 15. Okay, so that is the way how the intergroup sale of inventory is adjusted in the consolidation. Right? So I think that I discussed this entry. and also I discussed this entry, right? And if you make these adjustment to the consolidation worksheets, right, you can see that cash ultimately no impact, minus and plus, therefore no value. I showed that earlier, right? Inventory we had 150, it has been overstated by 50, therefore we credited 50 to the inventory, then it came to the cost 100, and we recognized a deferred tax asset of 15, then it comes to the consolidated financial statement as an asset, right? And we had the accounts payable, nothing happened, so it came as it is, තියෙන විදිහටම ආවා. Current tax liability එකත් වෙනසක් වුණේ නැහැ, government එකට ගෙවන්න තියෙන ගාන ඒකත් එහෙමම ආවා. හරි? එතකොට බලන්න statement of financial position එකේ SOFP එකේ අවසානට ආවේ inventory 100 වලට ආවා, deferred tax asset 15, right? Accounts payable 100, current tax liability 15. When it comes to the profit and loss or income statement, sales වල තිබුණා අපි අපිටම කරපු sale එකක් 150, we removed it, therefore no, right? We had a cost of sales 100, ඒකත් අපි අපිටම කරපු sale එකේ cost එක, ඒකත් අපි remove කරා, therefore 0. හරි? income tax expense එකක් තිබුණා මේ profit එක මත 50 මත, ඒකත් අපි අපිටම කරපු sale එකක් නිසා ඇතිවෙච්ච එකක්, ඒකත් අපි remove කරා, එතකොට බිඳුව. right? so මේක තමයි worksheet එකට වෙන බලපෑම. අර transactions ටික, අර journal entries ටික record කළා නම් මම මේ පෙන්නන worksheet entries ටික දැම්මනම්, right? මෙන්න මේ ටික දැම්මනම් automatically ඔය figures ටික එනවා. debit sales 150, credit cost of goods sold 100, credit inventory 50. Then deferred tax asset account debit 15, income tax expense account credit 15. So when you post these journal entries to the worksheet entries or worksheet, you get the final balances.